Hello and welcome to the 17th broadcast of the Nerdflix podcast. Today we are continuing our two-part series on the Harry Potter films. Part 2 covering the Order of the Phoenix, the Half-Blood Prince, and both parts of the Deathly Hallows. And we'll even talk a little bit into the spin-offs such as Fantastic Beasts and even The Cursed Child. We also have the second part to our product review to get into and a lot of extra fun things as well. So let's get started. Hey, it's time for Nerdflix! Nerdflix!
Welcome to the Nerdflix podcast.
The first film/book we'll talk about today is Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. This was a pretty good book, pretty interesting. The movie was so-so, the movie was okay. It wasn't terrible, but it's definitely not the best Harry Potter movie. But overall, it was pretty okay. In this movie, we of course find out about the Order of the Phoenix, a secret organization created to basically rebel against Voldemort's forces. It is currently stationed in the house of Sirius Black's family, and throughout this, we get into a lot more Voldemort and Death Eaters, and overall, it's pretty good. Like I mentioned last week on the show, you kind of have to see these things to understand them. So if you haven't seen these movies or read these books, I do recommend it, because some of the stuff doesn't sound a little odd if you are not into the Harry Potter world. In this movie, and also the book, we do go into Sirius Black's house. Not really his house, more of his family's house. He doesn't really like being in there. But we do see a family tree with his entire family on it. And in the book, we do go into it a little bit and talk about his family. We go into his brother, Regulus Black. That's how I figured out who R.A.B. is. He's mentioned at the end of the 6th book and through the 7th book. But also in the movie, we actually see this family tree. And you need to, put stuff on there because it's the movie and you're going to see it. So, J.K. Rowling actually provided 5 generations of names, birth dates, and death dates of Sirius Black's family. And she also provided family crest and where the heads should be burned off the wall because, someone feels that they've betrayed the family, just like in the book. In this book, we are introduced to a house elf named Kreacher who serves Sirius Black's family for a very long time. They have this tradition when house elves get too old to do what the book says to carry a tea tray, they have this tradition of chopping off house elves' heads and putting them on the wall. But that's irrelevant. Anyways, this house elf named Kreacher is somewhat significant to the plot, but he's more significant throughout the rest of the films. But he was originally just going to be cut out of the movie. They were originally not going to have Kreacher in this movie because he served no significance into this film. But J.K. Rowling said that they needed him because he was important later on, so they kept him. In one scene in the movie, they are in the Great Hall and they are eating breakfast. And you can see some boxes of cereal in the background. The brands being Cherry Owls and Pixie Puffs. And the boxes have the same color scheme and look as the real brands of cereals they are playing off of. In this movie, we're introduced to my least favorite character in the entire Harry Potter series. It's not Voldemort, it's Dolores Umbridge. This character is hated by most of the Harry Potter fandom. This is probably the worst character if you're not counting Voldemort. In fact, a lot of people, including me, dislike this character more than they dislike Voldemort. And this character is just a straight-up jerk. This is a professor that comes into Hogwarts from the Ministry, and is not very nice to the students, and is incredibly obsessed with pink. Again, if you haven't read them or seen them, you wouldn't really get it, which is why I recommend, if you haven't, at least look up Dolores Umbridge from Harry Potter. But anyways, this movie introduces Dolores Umbridge and Dolores Umbridge's office, which is incredibly pink. Pink furniture, pink desk, and there's all sorts of decor. There's crazy pink chairs that look very uncomfortable to sit in. And also on the wall, she does have 40 pictures of cats. There are plates hung on the walls. There are exactly 40 of them, and they're all blue screen there on the plates, on the wall, on the set. And basically, they filmed just a bunch of cats doing all sorts of random stuff and all sorts of random costumes, and then they digitally put them on the wall of Dolores Umbridge's office. The next movie we'll talk about today is Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. The book for this was excellent. The movie, not so much. The movie, in fact, is probably my least favorite Harry Potter film. I do not think they adapted this very well. In fact, they added a lot of unnecessary things, and we'll get to that a little bit later on. But really, I did not like the film, but I very much so enjoyed the book. So we'll start off talking about the book, and we'll get into the movie and some of its issues later. But the book was very good, and it is very important to the Harry Potter plot. But the first half of the book isn't very full of action. It's mostly just setting things up and all sorts of stuff we need to know. But then you get to the back half, and that's when it really gets intense. First, Dumbledore and Harry go on a search for one of the Horcrux to destroy it. Again, those, if you haven't really seen the movie, you wouldn't really know those are. Those are like pieces of Voldemort's soul that he scattered throughout the wizarding world. And then the book ends with a shocker, Dumbledore's death. And that is how we end the Half-Blood Prince. The movie was not very good. Like I mentioned, this is probably my least favorite, not even probably, this is my least favorite Harry Potter film. They added too much and they took away too much. They added unnecessary things and they took away necessary things. They added the entire burrow burning down, like the Weasley's house burns down in the movie. Never in the book, but just in the movie. So pointless thing to add, and I don't see why that was necessary. And they take away all sorts of crucial plot points, and then just kind of mix it around. The whole thing is very, clippy, and you throw around from one scene to another. There's no really good transitioning. And it really isn't a very good film. And I'm not the only one who is a fan of the books, but not this movie. In fact, if you ask people who have read the books, a lot of them will say they disliked the movie. And in fact, when they were screen testing it on Harry Potter fans, they said that they were disappointed and that the movie had pointless scenes and missed many crucial character and plot lines. I couldn't agree more. Probably the thing I dislike most about this movie is the addition of the burrow, the Weasley's home, burning down. And I already mentioned this, and I really didn't want to talk about it, but it is actually kind of interesting how they accomplished this in the film. They actually used the set of the burrow, and then they burned it in a controlled burn. So that was real fire. Like I said, I don't really like the addition of the burrow burning down in the movie, but it was kind of interesting how they accomplished that. They took the set of the burrow and burned it in a controlled burn. It was real fire. One of the things the script writers and director had in mind for this film was after Dumbledore's death, they thought Harry should take Dumbledore's wand. But J.K. Rowling pointed out that that would become a big plot hole if they did that, because that would cause a lot of problems with the next book. So they didn't end up having Harry take Dumbledore's wand. Like I've mentioned, in this movie, Harry and Dumbledore begin their search for the 7 Horcruxes. Unfortunately, Dumbledore doesn't get to go on and finish that search with him, but Harry does. But anyways, when they find the first one, you notice that Dumbledore has already found it, and that his hand is very much so damaged from the power of the Horcrux. And so in the film, they had the actor wear basically like a green screen glove. It was a green glove, and they had 3 different stages of the damage, and he wasn't allowed to move his hand very much. And now it is time for another segment of product review. This product review segment is playing off last week's segment on the first Harry Potter part. Last week I reviewed everything I personally owned, and now we are talking about all the stuff that's out there that you can buy. There's a lot of Harry Potter stuff out there. It is not hard to find some Harry Potter merchandise. There are some really interesting stuff out there. Just on Amazon alone, you can get everything from Legos to bracelets to even a Harry Potter themed headbands game. But the one site I am interested in, and all Harry Potter fans should be, is the official HarryPotterShop.com. This is actually very interesting, and they do have a wide variety of stuff, and there's tons on here. So if you are interested, you can go to HarryPotterShop.com. This is a UK website, so everything on here, all the prices are in pounds, so I guess you'd have to convert to US currency if you were buying off of here, I suppose. But there are tons of departments to look through on the website, but I'm not going through everything, obviously. That would be a whole podcast by itself. But right now I am in the collectibles section. They do have a variety of Funkos, everything from everyone's Patronuses to Harry with his invisibility cloak. But what I've noticed is they do have a lot of wands. They have Albus Potter's wand from The Cursed Child. We'll get into that a little bit later. Bellatrix Lestrange's wands. Cedric Diggory's wand. Cho Chang's wand. They have a chocolate frog pin. They have Deathly Hallows pins. They have a Dobby action figure. Draco Malfoy's wand. They have tons of pins, all sorts of pins. They have Fleur Delacour's wand, Fred's wand, George's wand, Ginny's wand. You can buy a snitch pin. And really all sorts of interesting. You can buy Harry's wand. I wonder if they have the Elder wand. Hold on. If you don't know what the Elder wand is pretty much the most powerful wand in the Harry Potter universe. And they have the Elder wand. Technically it's classified under Grindelwald's wand, but they do have the Elder wand, so that is pretty interesting if you want to check that out. The final Harry Potter we'll talk about today is Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. An excellent book, and the movies were good too. Finally, they pulled it together after 2 not-so-great and terrible movies, and they finally made a pretty decent movie. They actually split the book into 2 parts, 2 movies, which I guess mattered when they released them, because they released them 2 separate dates, but nowadays I kind of consider them as one thing, because they always air them back-to-back on TV, and they're all in the same DVD case. But I still tend to rewatch. When I rewatch them, I tend to normally just rewatch the second part, because the first part's mostly explaining and setting things up, and if you already know what's going on, the second one is more interesting to rewatch. But overall, there's a good job both ways. In this one, we conclude the Harry Potter series. Harry Potter is on the run from Death Eaters and, of course, Voldemort. We found out all about the tale of the 3 brothers, as told in Tales of Beedle the Bard. You can actually get that. There's not something I should have mentioned that in product review, but you can get a book called Tales of Beedle the Bard, which is just the Tales of Beedle the Bard, and it is very interesting. But anyways, we find out about the Deathly Hallows, a super cool symbol I doodle all the time on my math pages. You can see it right there on the picture for this podcast. But the Deathly Hallows symbol is made, of course, of the invisibility cloak, the Resurrection Stone, and the Elder Wand. Again, this makes no sense if you haven't seen them or read them, so I apologize again to anyone who hasn't. And basically, overall, it's pretty good. For this movie, there were a total of around 500 wands made, and each day you had to check in your wand and check out your wand. And many of them came back broken. In this movie, we have a scene described as the 7 Harrys, where the members of the Order of the Phoenix drink the Polyjuice Potion and all turn into Harry Potter. Again, I don't know what J.K. Rowling has with the number 7. She really likes the number 7. I don't know if you've noticed that, but I definitely have. 7 books, 7 Harrys, 7 Horcruxes. Those are only 3 of the many things she's used the number 7 for. So I don't know what it is with the number 7. But anyways, to film this scene, they needed to have all the actors perform their roles as Harry, but, just being themselves. And then Daniel Radcliffe, the actor who played Harry Potter, had to dress in their costumes and then act out that same exact thing. And then with some special effects and computer stuff, boom, you have the 7 Harrys. In this movie, we go to Godric's Hollow, the town where Harry was born and his parents were killed by Voldemort. But did you know that Godric's Hollow is actually the same exact set as Hogsmeade? If you don't know what Hogsmeade is, that is a town they go to in prior movies and books, with basically shops and all sorts of stuff for the students to go and check out on weekends. In this movie, we return to Gringotts, the bank for the wizards, and in this movie, we actually go down deep in the Gringotts, and the main characters take a dragon, and they have to escape Gringotts on a dragon, and they send the dragon through the floor of the bank. Then the bank erupts as this dragon flies through, and it's pretty cool, actually. But the original, I wouldn't say set, because they filmed on location, so the original location of Gringotts was this place called Australia House, and it was a real bank. But obviously they couldn't destroy it to film the dragon scene, so they had to recreate a set that looked exactly like the bank. Harry Potter has had a number of spin-offs. There's been all sorts of spin-off books that relate into Harry Potter, like real books from the books, like Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, the book, not the movie, we'll get into the movie, Quidditch Through the Ages, and like I mentioned, Tales of Beedle the Bard. But they had a spin-off movie series called Fantastic Beasts, and then they also had, I wouldn't say an 8th book because it's not canon, but a play adaptation that played off of the ending of the 7th book about Harry Potter as an adult and basically his children and Voldemort's daughter. And it is really okay. The book I've read, the book is literally just a play script printed into a book, and I've read it and it's pretty fine. I just don't think it should be canon, and it isn't. But they have had a spin-off movie series called Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. That is a play off of the book I just mentioned, even though it's not technically based on a book, because that isn't really a book, it's more like a guidebook to the creatures of Harry Potter. But anyways, the first movie is called Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, and then they have a second one out called The Crimes of Grindelwald, and they are supposedly going to have 5, I think. I just know the next one's coming out 2022. But anyways, I might do a separate podcast someday. I don't know, but that could make for a different podcast, so I'm not going to go really deep into Fantastic Beast. But I will give you one little fact for Fantastic Beast, and that is that the actor who played the main character of Fantastic Beast, Newt Scamander, played by Eddie Redmayne, he spent time with zookeepers to train for the role of Newt Scamander, because Newt Scamander is obviously a creature handler, so he spent time with zookeepers to learn how to properly handle animals. By the way, I know that doesn't make sense if you haven't seen the films. Again, it's a little weird if you haven't. And one last thing I'd like to mention is that I definitely did not even get close to covering all the Harry Potter facts I could have. There's so much more out there, so if you are interested in this, or you're a fan of Harry Potter, or you want to learn more, I recommend researching more into the making of the Harry Potter films, because that is really interesting how they did those. I actually have a book called J.K. Rowling's Wizarding World, Movie Magic, Extraordinary People and Fascinating Places, Volume 1. That's a big name. But it is actually about the making of the Harry Potter films and the first Fantastic Beast film. And it is really interesting. So if you are interested in that, I recommend you look into that. Okay, that wraps up another episode of the Nerdflix podcast. Be sure to listen again next week. And until then, I will see you next week on the Nerdflix podcast.
Thank you for listening. Goodbye.